Hello and welcome, I'm Rick James, and today I've come down to Florida to meet with Deputy Kisling. He is a pilot for the County Sheriff's Department here, and today he's going to be talking to us about what he does on a daily basis and give us a tour of this awesome machine we've got sat behind us. Shane, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What is it that you do with this machine for the Sheriff's Department down here in Florida?
The Sheriff's Aviation Unit, it supports the road patrol and other agencies on the ground. We augment them as a aerial surveillance platform, basically. Anything they need as far as traffic stops all the way up to missing persons or anything in between. It's not just law enforcement. We can do code enforcement for illegal dumping, or do before and after aerial surveys for hurricanes, or missing persons, or traffic control. We can do speed enforcement with this thing, just like a trooper on a highway.
Right.
So just about anything that the guys on the ground need, they ask, and we try to help
Something
them out.
they need a better view from up above that can help them with their work.
The God's eye view from overhead.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So with this machine then, are you flying just by yourself and operating everything yourself, or do you
No.
fly as a crew with a team?
Yes, it is definitely a multi-person cockpit mission. It's a pilot over here on the right seat, and we call them TFOs, Tactical Flight Operator, over on the other side. And they operate the mission equipment, being the camera, spotlight, PA speakers, and the mapping system.
Oh, okay. So basically you'll go up, you'll work with your ground crews either to assist with them, or you'll have like a mission to go and help search for people. So you'll be like, okay, you get sent to an area and then you start doing your work from above from there.
Yeah, so we've got radios that we can talk to all the other units on the ground, be it our agency or other agencies. So like for a missing person, they'll call us to go to the scene, and we'll hook up with the units who are already there, and they'll give us a specific area. Hey, we've already checked here, but we can't see here. We need you to look here.
Right.
So they do a good job on seeing everything at their level as far as like the roads and stuff like that in plain sight. So we'll look in areas where they don't have access to.
Right. And
like,
when you're talking about looking, you're looking with the camera, or are you using your eyes too, or a bit of both?
both. So the pilot on the right seat is the big picture with the old Mark I eyeball.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the doors off. So you're leaning out doing the old school visual reconnaissance, and then the TFO is running the camera and looking more at that micro view versus the macro view.
So as a pilot then, your job is to kind of keep that area in their focus, so it makes their job easier in a way.
Yeah, and that's a communication back and forth. We've got several different search patterns we'll do, either like a grid or a spiral or whatever we think we need for that situation. And the camera operator will give us guidance on, hey, I want to look at this canal, or I want to look in that backyard, or the pilot will say, hey, I think we need to do this grid, and then it's a back and forth. So you each give each other what you need to do the mission.
Yeah.
So if we're like, they're looking at something and you go past it, it's a, hey, I need you to come back around and we'll look at this or look at that. Or the pilot, we'll see something with the eyeball and it's too far away, and it'll be, hey, bring your camera around 2 o'clock out my side.
Yeah.
Look at this, and back and forth like that.
Oh, okay, I get you. So when you're flying, like I know a lot of people always say, like, why is that police aircraft just circling around my house all the time? Are you always circling, or do you come to hovers to look around, or what is the general way that you fly to keep the camera operator doing what they need to do?
No, very, very rarely will we come into a hover. Just for safety sake, you get into that height velocity diagram that's common to all helicopter pilots. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with, you could either do an orbit around a certain area, or a grid back and forth, or a combination of the two. Normally, for like a missing person, for example, what I like to do is go to the last place they were seen, be it their home or the school or wherever, and start there and start spiraling out from there. And then if for whatever reason they give us a last known direction of travel, it'll be more of an egg-shaped where you kind of start working out in the last place they were seeing going.
Yeah. So when you orbit, do you orbit on keeping your side on the subject or the camera operator, or is it both?
That is a big contention in my world. In law enforcement aviation, that is the #1 way to start an argument or a conversation is you ask right-hand orbit, left-hand orbit. We don't have a set policy. Some agencies will say we only operate left-hand orbits. Some places say we do right-hand. We don't stipulate either or. It's what you need mission dependent. I will say 99% of the time it's right-hand orbits because the pilot is looking out his door for that big picture. And but if the camera operator needs to see something else on his side of the aircraft, well, then we'll circle left-hand orbits. But generally, we normally do right-hand orbits. But that's like
that's what you do here.
That's what we do here, and everyone else does it different. But that is a big point of contention in law enforcement aviation.
Yeah, because I knew when I went up for a night shift with one of the police patrols, they were all left-hand.
Left-hand, yeah.
And it was the same thing. I'm like, why are you doing left-hand? It's like, because that's what they want me to do. And I'm like, okay, I suppose it's like the happy wife, happy life, right? You've got to keep your people you're working with happy.
That's true, but my feelings are that the person in the left seat is what we call heads down. They're in the cockpit. They're looking at their screen. They're not even looking outside the aircraft. So why do you need to turn to them anyway? If they're doing their job correctly, they're looking at the screen. So the person who's not looking at the screen needs to be looking out the aircraft, one, for searching on the ground, and also it's easier for me to see and avoid other aircraft if I'm turning into a place I can see versus turning into a place that's harder for me to see.
And I see with this machine, you got no doors. So you fly enough doors off 24 hours a day?
Yes.
Nice.
Well, it's Florida. You don't have to worry about cold or anything.
It's hot right now. We're being eaten by the mosquitoes, and it's hot. So, I hope you're enjoying the video.
No doors.
And obviously, there's no air conditioning on this bed if you got
no air conditioning.
So even
the air conditioning is that big 35-foot rotor blade.
So in the middle of summer, I imagine it gets pretty warm in there.
Not so much. If you're down low level trying to get that detail, it's hot and humid. But as soon as you get up to 1,000, 2,000 feet, it really cools off. So it's not as bad as people think it is. So
when you're out on patrol, are you normally around about 1,000 feet above ground, or does it vary depending on kind of what you're looking at?
It's mission dependent. During the daylight, we can go down to as low as 500 feet AGL. We try not to go down that low just for safety. But if you're needing to get that real good detail, you can go down that low. But normally it's 1,000 feet and above. At nighttime, we have it in our policy that we stay 1,000 feet and above, just for obstacle avoidance and stuff like that. And plus, 90% of our flying is over built-up urban areas, so we need that extra altitude for autos to go down to. We're going down to a road intersection or somebody's backyard or something like that. So 1,000 feet and above for nights, and everything in between. We go from 500 all the way up to 4,000 feet.
Oh, okay. And are you flying 24 hours a day in this mission? And do you fly more at night, or like how does your job work? Are you like an on-call basis, a bit like an EMS machine, or are you out on patrols at certain times, or how does your kind of general day-to-day work?
It's a little bit of both. We're stationed here at the airport, obviously, so when road patrol needs aviation, they'll call the 911 dispatcher and they'll get the supervisor approval to launch the helicopter for whatever reason. Or we also have it in our policy that it's up to the pilot. If we want to patrol, we go out for a patrol. We don't have to be called. It's not like EMS where we can only go when the phone rings. So we do both. We'll go out on patrols and be proactive, and then we're also here on call for those phone calls from not just us, from other agencies. So if there's like this weekend, we're actually covering a sheriff's office in another county whose aviation is down for whatever reason. So if the phone rings, we'll go to them. Now, we can't obviously go patrol over there. We have to stay in the county. But
You can
It's a little
assist.
bit of both. It's proactive patrol work and then also waiting for the phone to ring.
And are you flying this more at night or during the day, or is it?
It's both. I would
Yeah.
say it's the same. The daytime is, you get more missions, more diverse missions in the daytime, be it normal law enforcement work, or it could be aerial surveying, or we get a lot of calls for crime scene photos.
Yeah.
We get, every year, for example, every year we go out and take overheads of all of our schools in the county to update their emergency plans.
Right.
So obviously we have to do that during the daytime.
Yeah.
At night, it's more law enforcement.
Right.
You're going out looking for bad guys.
Right.
You don't do photos at night. So I would say we probably fly more in the daylight just because of the more mission sets.
Yeah.
But at night, we still fly at night, but it's more for
More just the focus for
more
the
of the going out looking for bad guys,
Yeah.
supporting the law enforcement mission.
Gotcha. So when you're up on patrol, you're kind of, does the ground units know you're airborne, or is it a case of you're just up so you can be on scene quicker?
Yes.
Kind of thing? Or it's like, if they know you're up, people are like, hey, can we get whatever your call sign is to this point because we've got a possible chase starting here, or carjacking, or...
Yeah, so what we do is when we take off, we'll check in with the dispatcher that's on the same radio as the road guys.
Yeah.
And if they're paying attention and they hear us go active and they know that, hey, for the next wherever time that I've got aviation. So they'll ask us all the time, like, hey, could you look at this or look at that? Or I've heard a lot of cars racing around this area.
Yeah.
Can you come check it out? Or
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And that's basically what we're here for, is anything they need, they ask and we go do, kind of thing.
So
So
it's basically an asset of the county, really.
yeah, exactly. And it's it's everything in between. So they'll hear us and they'll ask us specifically to look at some stuff, or we'll just go out and they'll do traffic stops. They won't even ask for us, but I'll look off in the distance and I'll see the traffic stop and I'll just go and start orbiting around that guy to support him. He didn't call for us. He didn't, most of the time he doesn't even know we're there.
Oh, okay. So it's not like if you get a traffic stop, you put your spotlight on them just to get so that they're aware.
Sometimes, yes, just to let the people on the ground know that we're watching.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a force multiplier.
Yeah.
I don't like to use that word, but it kind of lets the people on the ground know that, hey, I'm not just dealing with this deputy standing in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm also dealing with a helicopter.
Yeah.
So it kind of like makes them more apprehensive to do something out of the ordinary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of times we'll just put the camera on them and just kind of like be observant, because the road deputies, they can control this space, arm's length. What we do is we cover them outside of that.
Right.
So we watch for cars pulling up behind them or people walking up toward them or something in their blind spot.
And then you call them on the radio, just give them the heads up, or put the searchlight on, just say, hey, we got you. We're keeping an eye on you.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, and Shane, so yeah, to me this looks like a Jet Ranger, but from talking with you earlier, it's not a Jet Ranger, hey?
It is not a Jet Ranger. And a lot of people confuse the two. They're kind of cousins. The Jet Ranger, the Bell 206, versus this is an OH58 Alpha model, A model.
Okay.
And the difference being is 58s they've got a slightly longer main rotor blade. It's I believe it's 12 inches longer, a slightly longer tail to help with the LTE.
Right.
The Army asked for that back from its original mission as an observation platform, a lot of time hovering in one spot. They wanted more tail authority. So the 58 is just a tiny bit larger than a 206.
Gotcha. So the 58 basically is the military version of the civilian Jet Ranger.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And some parts will cross between the two, but they are actually two different aircraft.
Right. So yeah, so what toys does this have on? Like, this has got some extra toys that were never on my Jet Ranger. I can see some stuff hanging off the bottom here, and I'm assuming this is all part of your mission profile of being a sheriff's pilot, right?
Yes. So the purpose of this aircraft is to haul around radios and a camera. Westcam MX-10. It's a currently set up as a 3-camera platform. Big one down here at the bottom, most prominent behind the gold-colored glass, is the IR camera. It's actually not really a camera. It's a sensor. Cameras see visible light. The IR sees the infrared. You'll notice it has this kind of gold-looking tint to the glass. It's because it's a special glass for the IR camera. It's called germanium because it's made in Germany. Then the other 2 cameras are just your normal day TV that has a zoom and then a day IO spotting scope. It's a fixed zoom that we use. It's like a scope on a rifle where you need to see really far off. It's non-zoomable, but you can change the focus. The main 2 though are the IR and the day TV. It's EO, electro-optical is what they call it. It also has the capability of mounting a laser for designating and different things. We don't have that in this one. We don't need it for our mission set. But a really super capable camera adds so much more capability to the aircraft. Without it, it would just be 2 pilots and eyeballs. This right here is the purpose of this aircraft, is to haul this camera around.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people are always asking me as a pilot, you know, with the police pilots circling overhead, they're like, well, can they see through my windows? And from what I understand, the infrared can't see through glass, hence the reason why it's got a germanium filter on it. But your regular camera can see through window just like a normal camera if you were going to point it through, right?
Yeah, everyone thinks it's like they see in the movies. It's not like...
No.
Like
it doesn't see through walls.
Doesn't see through walls. It doesn't have color, different colors. Yeah. It's black and white. You just see variations of black and white, either white hot or black hot. It can't see through glass because it's just seeing the temperature of the glass. It can't look through it. Now, if you have people sitting in a car, you can't see the individual people sitting in the car, but you can see that it's warm. You can see it's hot compared to the other vehicles next to it. Now, if they were to roll their windows down, then obviously we'd be able to see them. Yeah. But
with your regular HD camera in daylight, you can see just like you can with the camera that I'm holding now. Like if you can see it by eye, you can see it through that camera. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like any other camera, but times 1,000. Yeah. And the infrared. It works just as good in the daylight as it does at night. It's just seeing heat because it doesn't know it's in daylight or darkness because it doesn't see visible light. But this is really good for. There's some things that just you can't see with the naked eye. Like I can't tell you how many times we found people in the water, whereas you look out and you just see a sea of water, whereas the IR could see a little spot of heat, which is the top of their head. Floating on the water. Gotcha. Or someone hiding in some trees somewhere. You look and all you see is the trees versus with the IR, you can see that warm body heat.
And I see you've got a little name on your lady there.
Yeah.
Where did Tuck come from?
Yeah, this is unofficial, but all of these aircraft are surplus from the military. These came from the National Guard. So this aircraft, originally tail number was 340, came from the Kentucky National Guard. So she got named Kentucky. And the interesting story with her is we actually had a unit from the Kentucky National Guard come down to our airport on federal orders to support the customs. Right. And we extended them an invitation to operate out of our hangar. Well, they get here, and unbeknownst to them, several of those pilots had flown this aircraft in the National Guard. And so it was really neat seeing them kind of reminisce with their old friend here from their old unit.
That's cool.
But yeah, these are all surplus from the military. We've got Kentucky here, and then her sister ship over there that we looked at is Indiana, from the Indiana National Guard. Moving after that, you've got the PA speakers, which are extremely loud, and we use those mainly for missing persons. So like if you have a missing child, you can overfly an area where they were last seen, and you can broadcast that over the PA to the citizenry on the ground and say, hey, sheriff's office is looking for a small female wearing a blue shirt with a pink backpack.
Right, okay.
So then everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Moving after that is a tracker beam, spotlight, for lack of a better term. It's got a white light. It's got an IR filter, a red lens filter, and a yellow lens filter. The yellow lens is good for haze and fog and stuff. We get that a lot in Florida. And then the IR filter is good for, it's not visible light. It works with the pilot who's flying with the NVGs. So even at night, you have shadows.
Yeah.
So we can throw the infrared filter on the light and throw that infrared light into the shadows so the pilot can see what's going on with the goggles, and direct the infrared camera on the stuff that he's seeing more big picture kind of thing.
Okay. Is that light, is it like a pencil beam or is it a big
It's
wide
focused.
beam? Okay.
So you can bring it into a nice tight little area, or you can bring it back out to a really, really large area. And the white light isn't so much for the helicopter crew, it's for the people we're supporting on the ground.
Right.
So versus people on the ground walking around with handheld flashlights, we can put that overhead and now they're like walking around in daylight almost.
Oh,
so
okay.
their situational awareness at night just goes way up.
Yeah.
It's not for us, it's more for who we're supporting on the ground. And you can also slave that to the camera. So wherever the camera operator is looking, the spotlight can track along with it. So you don't have to operate both at the same time.
Right.
They're paired together.
That's handy because, yeah, one less thing to do in the aircraft, right?
One less thing to take off the list of multitasking.
Yeah. So coming down the side of the aircraft here, why have we got a thing hanging off the side of the aircraft here?
So, good question. This is called a fuel extender. So if anyone's familiar with the 206 or 58 family of aircraft, the fuel cell is right here and it goes down in an L shape under here. So normal situation, like on the other aircraft we can show you, this is gone and it's just a flush fuel filler cap.
Right.
So you can only fuel up to right about here before it stops.
Right.
You put this on, now you can fill all this space up to here, and even into here slightly. So it just gives you an extra, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like an extra 10 or 12 gallons. That just helps us, especially with this configuration, with only having 2 people on board, we can take a full bag of gas.
Yeah.
And gives us that much more station time to patrol or search for that missing child or whatever. So this is just a fuel extender.
So basically that's just an add-on from somebody who designed it a bit wrong when they on the original production. Because I know I've used it all the time on the Jet Ranger, but a lot of people have asked me like, why have you got like a thing on the side of your aircraft?
And the funny thing with these is these are actually hard to find. We actually had to pull this off of another aircraft.
Oh.
Yeah, so these are really low-tech, and that's the beauty of Bell helicopters. It's a low-tech solution to give you just a little bit more capability in the aircraft.
So with your range extender here, is your cap on a chain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's or I believe you guys call it a lanyard.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's why you have I hate to say it, but the chip marks down here at the bottom. But yes, if you don't pay attention to this, it will actually impact the aircraft. But it's more of to keep track of it versus so you don't have to worry about what was it you said, to put it up on the seat of your aircraft without having one. So yeah, it's tethered.
Yeah. So I'm not sure which is better, because when I was a junior pilot, this is one of my stories of being stupid. We had a Jet Ranger for the company that I worked at, and it was pretty fresh out of overhaul and paint. And I was, I won't say rushing, but I didn't do my walk around before I got in. I had refueled, put all the fueling gear away, but left that open on its tether.
Right.
took off. And as you just showed on there,
Yep.
how far it comes out,
Yeah, it will.
it had battered all of the brand new paint all the way around. And I was mortified when I got back in. I thought I was going to get fired. I was okay because I admitted to it. The chief pilot used it as a learning experience. And then I didn't feel too bad because 2 weeks later, one of the other junior pilots crashed the aircraft and rode it off. Luckily, he was fine. He just rolled it over. But the aircraft was a complete write-off. So I didn't feel too bad. But put your fuel cap always back on and always do your walk around.
Another pro tip in relation to that, too, especially with the 206s, that we actually happened to us, is the seat belts. If you look here, you'll notice our SOP says we always tie up our seat belts because this little guy will get sucked out and flap up against the aircraft and just destroy this honeycomb back here. So when you get that pilot job, always make sure you check your security of your seat belts.
And you know what? If you go into the civilian world, that's one thing you have to pass on to your customers, because if you're dropping them off in the bush and you're not shutting down, they don't do that. So then you take off and you're hearing ding, 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 and you know exactly what it is. And it's like, no, because now you owe the engineer a case of beer because it's all battered. At least if it's on the passenger side, you can say, well, it wasn't me, but you're still the PIC. But yeah, so that was a few little stories about gas caps and seatbelts.
So you got the mighty Rolls-Royce 250 C20, whopping 420 horsepower. Probably one of the most used aircraft or engines in light singles in helicopters. Very, very simple, well-proven engine. Easy to maintain. As long as you keep oil in it, it normally does really good. It's a backwards engine. A lot of people don't know is the air comes in the front through here, which these aircraft are modified with barrier filters versus the old vortex generators. So air comes in the front here, gets compressed in a diffuser scroll and goes outside the engine, down these tubes, back here into the back where the combustion chamber is. Some people call it the can. Fuel nozzle in the back, sprays fuels into the can, mixes with that air, gets ignited, and then it goes back forward through the center of the engine, down through the gas producer and all the vanes associated with that. Comes forward into this big gray chunk, which is your accessory gear case. This is what drives your main drive shaft, all your accessories, your generators, anything else you have attached to it before it goes forward to the transmission. So it actually comes in the front, goes back, makes a 180-degree turn, comes forward, gets expelled up through the exhaust out the top of the aircraft.
Okay, I gotcha.
So it's not a straight through design like everyone thinks a jet engine.
And then so looking at where your hand is, you've got your drive shaft that comes through into the main transmission, which is through your little mailbox there.
So the main transmission goes through what they call a K-flex coupling, which absorbs the vibration because the engine is hard mounted to the aircraft, and the transmission actually can float with the movement of the mass. So it goes through the K-flex coupling into the transmission down here. It's kind of hard to see. We've got another one we can show you, but goes through here and then up through to the main mast, and then also goes aft down through the top of the tail boom to drive the tail rotor in the back. Looking at the top deck here, the 58, the hydraulic system that controls the flight controls, it has three, two for the cyclic and one in the center for the collective.
So is this basically like the power steering of the helicopter?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly like the power steering. I mean, you could still fly the aircraft without these. I mean, you could put it on the ground. You don't do it in a normal situation, obviously. It's a emergency procedure, but it can be flown without it. It's just real difficult, real heavy, like when you lose your power steering. Also back here, you can see the the main mast of the helicopter. It's hollow. A lot of people think this is just a solid chunk of metal, but this is actually hollow for lightweight and for flex. You have your swash plates, so rotating swash plate, non-rotating swash plate down here below it. Your links for controlling the swash plates, hydraulic reservoir, and then this big guy down here at the bottom is your main transmission.
Gotcha. So with these, with the hydraulics, then, do the flight controls come up to these like actuators? Then I think I can just see.
Yeah. So the 206 and the 58 have this part of the aircraft known as the broom closet, and that's in between the two pilot seats and aft. So it's the controls go underneath the pilot co-pilot seats behind them, and then they come up right here through the center of the aircraft. All the push-pull tubes come up right through here before they get transferred aft into the controls. Both of the controls, the cyclic and the collective, they go through a couple of Bell famous bell cranks, intermixing bell cranks underneath the seats, and then they go aft into this broom closet, and they come up where they are attached to these hydraulic cylinders. A lot of from what I understand, a lot of the European helicopters don't have that. They have a more open floor plan where everything is underneath the floor, but these come straight up through the balloon closet up here. It's pretty simple, but it works.
Gotcha. So they basically, the flight controls just move the servo valves, and the servo valves provide the hydraulic power. So those bell cranks go in backwards by the looks of it, and then connect up to the pitch. Well, yeah, not your pitch links, but your links going up to your swash plate.
And then you can see, like I was saying earlier, about how the transmission is mounted on these transverse beams on either side, and then there's also what they call a fifth link in the back that allow it to float independent of the fuselage.
So your engine is fixed to the fuselage, but your transmission's got the flexibility. Yeah.
So the engine is hard mounted to the aircraft. There's no bearings or bushings or anything, and it is hard bolted down. So you have that K-flex in the drive shaft to absorb this movement between the two. So another little section back here in the back that a lot of people don't get to see is the oil tank, or we call it the bag. This was really cool because it's a leftover from the military, where it's self-sealing. It's ballistic. It's this. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's this black rubbery bag that's meant to absorb small arms fire to go into it, and then it seals itself back around it.
Okay.
So it doesn't leak the oil out. Just forward of this is what we call the squirrel cage, where you've got the oil cooler, and then it's got a small blower that's driven directly off of the tail rotor drive shaft below that to cool the cooler. And then you have a filter here for the oil, and then it's got a little red button indicator on it to let you know. One of the pre-flight items is to check that for any kind of impending blockage or anything here in the front of it.
Gotcha.
And then moving aft from that is your tail rotor sections, or your tail rotor drive shaft sections. The first two are steel. After that, they're all aluminum, and then mounting them are these little joints called Thomas couplings. They absorb a little bit of that flex from all these sections, so they're not bolted together. And then hanger bearings supporting them along the whole length of the tail rotor.
So Shane, what is all these toys we've got in your machine here? Because you definitely got more than what I had in my jet box.
Yes, so not your average civilian 206 panel, but still similar. So like I said before, when we got these aircraft, they were straight from the National Guard, which had their normal steam gauges and associated instruments. So through some grant money, the Sheriff's Office had these completely redone avionics-wise. So starting with the instrument panel was one solid chunk of aluminum that got milled out for our specifications to accept mainly this side of the cockpit. So
Okay.
starting left to right, this is a macro blue touch screen. It's kind of the latest, greatest in mission equipment screens as far as aviation goes. It's really a computer in itself, and it gives us, obviously shows us what the camera is looking at, but it also shows us the map on what we're working with.
That's cool.
Here. So
it's a moving map with street names on it, and
yeah.
so wherever the camera's looking,
So
the map is kind of centered to the
so
aircraft.
the computer will tell you what you're looking at, and it works just like a camera in the fact that it'll pinch and zoom, and it's not really working 100% right now because the aircraft's inside. It's not talking to the satellites, but we can drop points on the screen, and it'll give us addresses of where we're looking at and where we need to go. And it's not just a normal map. Like we have your normal satellite map that you're used to seeing. We have
there you go.
topographical data.
Oh, I bet that's handy for like search and rescue kind of thing.
We don't really use it here in Florida because it's flat as a pancake down here. But what we do use is kind of an aviation VFR sectional type map.
Yeah.
And then we also have nautical maps. A cool thing about this system is that this mapping system from Churchill, which now it's called Shotover, it's actually tied to the camera system. So if we're going to an address somewhere, we can spring up and we can start typing. So if we're going to 123 whatever street,
yeah,
it'll know the position of the aircraft on the map, and it'll start giving us addresses near to far from the aircraft. So we just look and see which one we want, and we can just...
So it's almost like your direct to on a regular aviation GPS,
exactly.
or like Google Maps. You
exactly.
go into the airport, it gives you...
Instead of direct to an airport, we can go direct to an actual address, and even to the point where we can hit a button and the mapping system will talk to the camera and point the camera at that address.
Oh, right. So as you're coming into it, it's already filming and zooming in.
Exactly. With no manual input on the controller at all, you're already looking at the address, and it just takes that much bit of workload off of the TFO on this side of the aircraft.
So by the looks of it, your cockpit's kind of split up into two. You've got the side for your TFO, and then you've got your side too, right? So
yes.
Your side is just helicopter basics, basically.
Yeah, I like to tell people that I'm really just a glorified Uber driver for the camera operator.
That's all we are anyway.
That's all. I'm supposed to just operate the controls and take this side of the aircraft to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Over here is TFO side as far as the mission equipment. So they're operating the camera, spotlight, and the associated law enforcement public safety radios here in the center stack. And then from here over, it's your traditional 206 with your normal OH58 steam gauges with a little bit of modern glass that we added in after the fact for a little bit better situational awareness and maintainability. Some of these instruments are getting harder to maintain.
Yeah.
And so when you replace it with these modern electronics, they're just more reliable and easier to maintain.
Yeah, I've flown with the Aspen EFIS in a few machines, and it's nice. Now, I see you've got the Garmin touchscreen GPS there. Is that linked into the camera system? So when they put in, like, go to an address, does it bring that up, or is it just purely aviation, just like everything, every other GPS?
This is purely GPS as far as civilian. Yeah. It's not tied in whatsoever with the mission equipment. Gotcha. The only directionality we have with this is the steering cues on the screen, and it's just an old school. The left seater will tell the pilot, "Hey, our address is 050 magnetic for 10 miles," and we'll just fly to that point.
Gotcha. So what have you got? Can you just take us through like your cockpit, what like each kind of gauge does? You got warning lights and radios and all that kind of stuff. You want to give us a bit of a tour of, what does what?
Yeah. So From here over, it's literally just a basic VFR only panel. We're not instrument equipped. So starting over here, you have your normal engine indicators, oil pressure, temp, DC amps, and fuel quantity. Probably the most important gauge on the aircraft.
And what's your, is it 600 pounds for the maximum amount of fuel you take?
Yeah, it's 600 pounds, but you'll never put 600 pounds in this aircraft, even with that fuel extender on. The reason for that is back in the day, the Army used this same gauge for different aircraft.
Right.
So some of them would take 600 pounds. We won't take it. We could plus up to a little over 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Max full bag.
Gotcha. So you can fly full fuel with your TFO?
Yes.
Okay.
Like it sits right now, full mission equipment, pilot, TFO, we can take a full bag of gas.
Yeah. And how long does that normally give you flight time wise?
That'll give us, depending on what we're doing, if we haul it back to like bucket speed, about 3 hours.
Oh, okay.
Give or take. It just kind of depends. Around here, we're kind of fighting the wind a lot. We're being right next to the ocean.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what we're doing, how hard we're having to maneuver it around. If we're just doing aerial surveillance where we're at altitude, we just haul it back to best endurance. We can do about 3 hours.
Okay.
And a lot of our work is right here near the airport, so
it's nice.
that kind of comes in handy.
So what you got next to those?
Next to those is old school steam gauges. So your torque meter. Turbine helicopters run off of torque. That tells you your percentage of how hard the engine's working. And then probably the next most important one is your TOT, turbine outlet temperature. Okay. These two right here are going to be your bread and butter when you're flying turbine helicopters, is your torque and your TOT. Depending on your atmospherics and what your configuration is, sometimes you'll torque out before you temp out, or sometimes you'll temp out before you torque out. Gotcha. It just kind of depends on the conditions.
That's going to be your limiting factor for your power.
Yeah. Okay. Below that is N1 RPM. That's what the engine's doing back there behind you. Old school airspeed indicator, pretty common. And then you have the real prominent feature in helicopters is the dual tack. So this is 2 needles in one. You have the turbine needle and then the rotor RPM, and then they mirror up together over here in the green. For the entire flight, you want to see these two stacked on top of each other. If they split for whatever reason, that's a problem. Yeah. So this right here is you'll be looking at that a lot during the flight.
Just going back to your airspeed, what kind of airspeed do you normally cruise around at, or do you orbit at a set speed? Do you cruise point A to point B at a set speed, or like what's your normal airspeed?
It varies according to the mission. If we're just leaving the airport to go to a scene, we'll pull in as much as we can. With the doors off, we're limited to 100 knots. Yeah. So we'll stop there, but that'll get us to the scene. Yeah. And then once we get there, we'll try to haul it back to depending on what altitude we're at. 40 knots, or I normally don't like to get that slow down low. Yeah. But normally between 40 to 60 knots is kind of like our searching speed. Gotcha. And then if we're just out and around patrolling, really not doing nothing in specific, we're just waiting for the radio to go off, I normally fly around between 70 and 80 knots. That kind of gives me a good balance of covering ground and endurance. Gotcha.
So then what you got next? You got your EFIS, what is it? Electronic Flight Information System.
So you got the Aspen 1000H. H means it's the helicopter version. Really great little bit of kit for the cockpit, because the cool thing about it is this guy slides into 2 of these normal circle holes in an existing panel. Yeah. So it replaces 2 steam gauges, a lot more reliable, gives you a lot more information as far as artificial horizon. You got the newest style of what they call tape gauges for altitude and airspeed. Yep. And then below that, you've got just a normal like basic CDI. We don't really use that a lot, obviously, with us just being a VFR ship. Yeah. But that's a good just kind of compass. The cool thing about it though is it'll give you wind direction and ground speed.
Yeah.
Versus just airspeed.
Yeah. That's handy.
That comes in handy a lot for if we're the best way to describe it is we're doing holding over an area doing surveillance, and it kind of gives you an idea of what to do for your wind correction while you're doing these orbits. Really, really cool little instrument. I like this guy a lot.
Yeah.
Coming right of that is just your old school altimeter, static, pedostatic altimeter, and then vertical speed, which again these are backed up by the Aspen, or these back up the Aspen.
Gotcha.
Below that, good old fashioned Garmin 650. Really cool little radio, purely for civilian. So this is aviation radio.
Yep.
Nothing different than what you guys have in a normal civilian application.
Yeah.
Below that is a little Becker VHF radio again for another aviation radio. So in total we have 4 radios in the aircraft.
Okay.
So 2 civilian VHF radios, and then we also have 2 public safety frequency 800 megahertz radios.
So is that the radio there that you just pointed to? Is that the one that you talk to the other officers?
Yes.
Okay.
So from here over is civilian aviation, and then this radio stack is the good old TFM 9100. This is a really common military, public safety, even in the commercial market. This is a really common style of radio for working with ground-based elements.
Gotcha.
It's not so much for aviation, even though we have the capability of talking to other aviation elements with this radio, like Coast Guard. We talk to Coast Guard a lot with this.
Yeah.
But it's mainly for ground-based. And the good thing about this radio is we've got it filled with so many different agencies that we assist. We've got law enforcement, fire departments. There's a mutual aid frequency stack in there. So if we're working with anywhere in the state where we go to back up for like hurricanes and we're having to deal with other agencies, everyone can switch over to the mutual aid channels. And so we don't have to worry about working off of one radio or another. Everyone's already on that same radio channel.
Gotcha.
And we can also do retrans with this radio. So if we are working with 2 different agencies, we can actually turn the helicopter and this radio into a retrans, so we can tie those radios together.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's a really awesome way of kind of going back to that old school airborne command and control that this helicopter is originally designed for. But this is our public safety radio stack. And then above that is just an ICS panel.
So that selects which radio you're listening to, talking to. Yeah, this
right here is the #1 thing that trips up new people for law enforcement, public safety, aviation.
It trips up experienced pilots too, trust me. The amount of times I've called out on the wrong frequency because I was switched on COM 1 and I needed to be on COM 2. So,
exactly.
I guess anybody.
I'm an instructor for the TFOs, and this right here, I have to devote the most time to this one little box right here. That trips up everybody. But so you can listen on 4 radios all at the same time and only transmit on one or the other. But this is a really complicated thing.
So I see you've got a little bit of a cover there that looks like it's over your caution and warning panel.
So the helicopter still has the original caution and warning advisory panels. So across the top and down here at the bottom, these little covers are to make the cockpit NVG compliant.
Okay.
So you can see how they mute those colors. So that's when at night you're flying around, and if one of these goes off, it doesn't shut down the goggles from being so bright of a light.
Gotcha. So I see you've got dual controls in this. So why have you got dual controls in this when your TFOs are basically there to manipulate the camera? Are they pilots too, or What's the purpose of dual controls? Can they take over if it's not because it's not a two-crew operation, right?
No,
Pilot-wise,
it's not a two-pilot cockpit. It's none of our TFOs are pilots. We operate single pilot, and we even sometimes we can even take this set of controls out of the aircraft altogether. If someone we feel like isn't really comfortable being around these controls, because you can see they're tied together.
Yeah.
So if you bump this, then you're bumping my controls as well. Or getting in and out, crossing over this collective, they're not really comfortable doing that. We can take these controls out completely, just remove that trip hazard.
Why do they keep them in?
Mainly just as a safety factor, just for whatever reason, if this person over here becomes incapacitated, we try to give these people enough training that not really fly the helicopter, but just at least get it on the ground.
Gotcha.
And that's purely based on their comfort level.
Yeah.
We have some people that we've tried to train them, and they're like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So we leave it at that. Some people, like, they want to know how to get it on the ground. So we'll give them enough rudimentary instruction on what the different controls do. So even if they completely just destroy the helicopter, hopefully we'll be able to walk away
on the ground. Well, that's cool. That's cool. And I see you've got an iPad there. Is that for police capabilities, or are you running like 4-flight on it or something like that?
This guy is purely on Garmin Pilot. We don't use 4-flight. Yeah. This is purely for traffic avoidance. Okay. So with it being in with the ADS-B currently that everyone should be up to date on, we use this because of our airport is a Class Delta airport with a fixed wing flight school on it. Yeah. It's a really busy airspace. So this is just a way for the pilot to enhance his see and avoid.
So if we were parked outside right now, we'd be able to see other aircraft flying around on there.
If we were able to talk to the satellites, we would be able to see all the other traffic around.
Yeah, that's really handy. Flying up north in remote areas, nobody talks on the radio, and then all of a sudden, an aircraft appears. And it would be really nice to have that. But yeah, I imagine down here, it's handy too. And it's nice because it's got I like the iPads because, you've got all your towers on there. It's great for obstacle avoidance. I love the iPads.
And another good thing, we don't really use it often, but sometimes we do, is the amount of information that's available at your fingertips with this new technology is great. So, like this next county down, we go and support them fairly often. So if I need to go there and get their information, it's right there. I mean, you've got all their information, frequencies, and everything that's like that. Yeah. So if you're going to I don't want to say unfamiliar airport because we've been there before, but like we go over to another agency that doesn't have aviation and we need to support them. Yeah, it's all right here at your fingertips. So it's the iPad. I see it as a enhancement, not a hindrance. Now, it's like anything else. You got to worry about batteries and everything. Yeah. So you can't rely on it. You need to have your eyes outside watching for that.
Well, one thing you don't have to deal with down here is when it gets to -30 Fahrenheit, like I do, and your iPad shuts off because it's too cold. But you also get too hot.
Yes, we have had these shut down from the heat, from the direct sunlight coming in and shutting them down. So
do you have like when I'm on fires, I always put like a window shade in my machine, or do you just bring yours in when you're not flying? You bring it into the hangar?
No, yeah. So normally what we do, part of the pre-flight that you do at the beginning of your shift is you pre-flight the aircraft, obviously, but then this is actually part of it where you check and make sure you've got a fully charged iPad. We have 2 of these, so one stays in the aircraft, one stays inside on the charger. Yeah. So we make sure, and one of the pilots, actually, one of his additional duties is purely just to make sure that the iPads have the right update, and the Garmin is updated as well.
Oh, so your iPads aren't plugged into the machine and powered; they're just purely battery.
Nope, pure battery on it.
Yeah, you got a pivot system too.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
We all love the pivot mounts here. They're really great.
So there we go. I love the pivot system. Glad you're using it too. There you go, guys. If you need an iPad, go see the pivot sites. I'll put a link in the description below because the pivot system is awesome.
Yeah, the pivot is great. It holds up to really heavy duty commercial use.
And pilots dropping it, you mean?
Yeah. But one cool thing I like about it though is I like to run the iPad vertically like this. But some people like to run it in the what do you call this? The landscape mode.
Yeah.
And with the pivot, you have the flexibility to do that.
It's simple. I love the pivot system. It's one of the best things for aviation.
Yeah, and then we don't use them, but you also have the little where you can clip it into a knee board or the little flap that comes over it.
Yeah, they've got some really cool stuff on their website. Yeah, if you're looking for a system for your iPad for the cockpit, definitely go check out the link below.
Yeah, I highly recommend the pivot.
Yeah, they're cool. So Shane, if we've looked at your machine now, but what about this job? Is this a job that somebody coming straight out of flight school can do, or is there like minimum hour requirements for this? Like what do you have to do to become basically a sheriff's pilot, like sitting where you are? Is it something that can do straight out of flight school, or?
Could you technically do the job? Yes. Right out of flight school, you could do it. I don't think a person, a really low time, meet the bare minimums coming into this would be a good fit for this job.
Yeah.
Just because it's so much single pilot, multitasking, and really, at times, it's really high tempo. Like if you're on a call where you're chasing a fleeing felon, or people are running from the ground guys, or just the pressure of trying to find a missing child.
Yeah.
It's really high stress. People are depending on you, kind of thing. Where most people fresh out of flight school, they're used to just taking off and following the magenta line to the next point.
Well, hopefully they should never have seen a GPS magenta line in flight school, but hopefully they should still be on job.
With this job, actually the flying the helicopter is you're not even really thinking about. It's almost like muscle memory. You're more quarterbacking the call that you're working on, because you're talking on multiple radios, coordinating with the units on the ground. You're watching for other airborne traffic. You're having to keep an eye on your fuel state, and that's not counting if everything's working just fine. If stuff starts malfunctioning, now you got to troubleshoot systems and everything else like that. So there's a lot going on in the cockpit.
So does the sheriff's department have a minimum hours requirement for this, or does it vary by county to county?
Yeah. So right now, as it stands today, if we were to hire a pilot tomorrow, our minimum time is 500 hours of helicopter PIC.
Yeah.
And then you also obviously you need the commercial license, the CPL. But
is there any minimum hour requirement for nighttime or MVGs or anything like that?
No. Some of our pilots on staff are instructors that can sign you off on the MVG work. That's kind of a niche thing. It's kind of hard to come by unless you're coming out of the military. So we realize that not a lot of people are going to get that outside the military. So we could kind of train you up on that in-house.
Yeah.
But I can't speak for the people that do the hiring and make those decisions, but I can say if you're walking in the door with just that 500 hours in a commercial helicopter, you don't really stand a good chance. We're looking for someone with probably around 1,000 hours of helicopter time and some sort of law enforcement background. Like, we don't require that you be a police officer or sheriff's deputy or whatever, but it checks a box that you have that the next person that's applying for the same job doesn't have.
Gotcha. So, because I know some law enforcement agencies, you have to be a sworn-in officer before you become a pilot, or vice versa.
Yes, and that would be a frustrating thing for someone looking to get into this career field, because every agency does it different.
Yeah.
Some agencies refuse to hire civilians.
Gotcha.
You have to be a sworn peace officer.
Gotcha.
Some agencies, like us, will hire civilians. Some agencies won't even hire pilots off of the street. You have to work with them for X amount of years before you can even, you have to work the road before you can even apply to the aviation unit.
Yeah. So if a pilot wants to become a law enforcement pilot, basically they've got to get in touch with their aviation unit that they want to go and join, and see what their requirements are, because it's all so different.
Exactly, yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Look at where you're trying to go and kind of meet their minimums, but then also kind of diversify yourself and try to go out on your own to kind of pick up some of these extra skill sets.
Yeah. And so let's say there's a pilot, he's got, say, this is what he wants to do. Is there any specific experience or jobs you would say to them, like if somebody came to you like, I want to do this, what's the best kind of jobs to do before this to get my 1,000 hours? Like, I've got 200 hours now, but I want to get to the 1,000 hours. What do I need to do? Is it better to go fly offshore, get some night experience, fly tours, or instruct, or what?
I would say do anything like, I've heard a lot of people have good things to say about people who do the tours in busy airspace. Like, the more time in controlled airspace, the better.
Okay.
Because you're used to talking on the radio and being in and around other aircraft. Someone who just takes off and goes from A to B, probably not the best fit. But if you've flying tours, working around with a tower control airport, the busier the better. Anything that where you're dealing with units on the ground, that's kind of hard to come by.
Yeah.
Coming out of the flight school, but anything that gives you a heavy workload single pilot environment.
Gotcha.
However you come by that is the better.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're looking for. Because even if you're a high time seasoned pilot, doesn't even make you really a good fit for this job, because if you're used to flying a 2-pilot cockpit and splitting that task load, if you start flying this and all of it is on you now, and if you can't handle that, then no matter what experience you have, you could have an ATP and not be a good fit here and be asked to leave because you can't fly single pilot.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. So yeah, it's just a case of cockpit workload is one of the big things here, and being able to manage that as a single pilot in busy airspace. Exactly.
Yeah, it's coordinating with the units on the ground while you're doing your whole pilot thing. You see and avoid, keeping up with fuel state, keeping up with where you're at on the map. I mean, everything is all on you, and that's after you've taken off. Here, there's no one to back you up as far as even making the call to launch. Like, you've got to know weather and how it's trending, or is it good now? Is it going to be good where I'm going? Is it going to be good when I get back to the airport?
Yeah.
There's nowhere to hand in a risk assessment to get approval for the flight.
Yeah.
It's all on the pilot.
It's all you. So what we got with your helmet there, Shane?
All right, so cool little bit of kit for working the night shift. Really familiar to all of my prior military guys, just exactly like everything else in this operation, surplus from the military. So these Anvis 6s, these are the white phosphorus night vision goggles. Some of your legacy models are the green tubes. We've had these upgraded to the white phos, which these are actually tiny little TV screens about an inch off of your eyeball. So you're not even, you know how they tell you rods and cones? Well, you're using your day vision to look at these tiny little TV screens with about 40 degrees field of view. So What that means is normally humans can see about 180 degrees off either side of us. You're flying with these at night, you only have 20 degrees off of center line looking through these tubes.
So it's like almost like looking through like a paper tube.
Exactly. So like take 2 toilet paper tubes and hold them up to your eyes, and that's what you're looking through while you're flying at night.
Yeah.
What that means is a lot of scanning. So you can't really rely on your peripheral vision or just merely moving your eyeball. You have to move your entire head.
Gotcha.
Panning these around, looking at where you're going, which coupled with battery pack and counterweight on the back means a lot of fatigue on your neck.
Yeah, I bet.
It's after a couple hours of this at night, you're really feeling it in your neck.
Because what does that helmet weigh with all this stuff on? Is it around about, what, 10 pounds?
That's a good question, actually. I think so. It's about 10 pounds when you figure full up goggles, battery pack, and counterweight.
Yeah, that's a lot on your head and especially you as a pilot, right? Look, you're working with your TFO, you're looking down a lot of the time, right? So then you've got all that weight hanging off the front of your shoulders, not over the top.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the constant motion and the swinging, panning around that is a lot of wear and tear on your neck. A lot of people who fly these really wind up with bad necks from the fatigue of all this. But I would not fly without them. I mean, these things, hands down, once you've flown with goggles, you'll never want to fly without them. I mean, these are great.
All my time has been unaided night.
Yeah.
So it's basically IFR.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. With these, like I said, once you've flown with them, you'd be hard-pressed to fly without them. They give you so much in situational awareness at flying at night. It's as close to you can get to flying in the daylight in pitch dark. Now, having said that, they don't work in complete darkness. They work off of magnifying ambient light. So you need starlight, moonlight, artificial light from the ground. They have their limitations in the fact that they can be washed out by bright light. Or the biggest thing for us here where we're at, because we're so close to the ocean, is you get that fog coming in off of the ocean, where if you're not really conscious on looking unaided to see that you're losing that ceiling coming down.
So you can't see the fog, just things start disappearing.
You can see the fog with the goggles, but you'll see it earlier unaided.
Yes.
So you'll start seeing, you'll start losing your stars and everything else like that. And that's why that's part of your scan, is to be constantly, you'll look under the goggles, you'll tilt your head back, and you'll look unaided to make sure you're not losing that ceiling, because even at night there's clouds and they'll start coming down, or that fog will roll in off the ocean. Whereas if you're looking through these the whole time, you'll be in it, you'll be more further along into that IMC before if you were to look unaided. And
are you flying at night always with your goggles, or is it so the second you start up, your goggles are down, off you go? Once you're ready to fly.
Down here for takeoff and landing, we'll be using the white light, the normal landing light, right here around the airport environment. We'll kind of go unaided, but just as soon as we clear the fence, goggles come down, you start flying aided. Now, you'll flip them up, obviously, just as like a break, to give yourself a break, give your eyes a chance to get rid of that strain. But majority of the time, you've got them flipped down and you're aided. Now, there are times where actually they'll get in the way, whereas sometimes you need to flip them up and just kind of look around to see something on the ground unaided. But no, 90% of the time, you're flying with the goggles. I mean, you'd be a fool not to.
Yeah. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Now you know what it takes to become a law enforcement pilot. If this is something you want to do, now you know how to get there. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you, Deputy.
You're welcome.
Much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.